Hi everyone, welcome to the Whiteleyverse with me, Connor Whiteley, for another daily short story. Now, before I start today's story, please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithm. Also, if you want to buy this short story and any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers and at your local bookstore and local library if you requested, and you can order paperback copies from Amazon. Now, here's today's short story. I hope you enjoyed just as much as I did writing it.
A fiery way to go. Retired Detective Kendra O'Connor hated fires. There was just something about them. Maybe it was how the flames danced so high into the sky, or maybe the fierce heat, or maybe fires were just too deadly for Kendra to like. The last one would make sense, but Kendra still hated fires. They were deadly and far, far too destructive in the wrong hands, so she hated them. So as she stood in the warm sunshine in one of London's many parks, Kendra wasn't impressed at hearing about fiery deaths once again. But that was why her best friends, retired Detective Jeff Long and retired Officer Patricia Nelson, had asked to meet with her. Kendra had to force all her hate away from her because when those two called, she had to help them solve a cold case. She had to help bring justice and closure to the families, friends of, and most importantly the victim. And no hate of fire was going to stop her. As Kendra took a massive sip of her massively refreshed iced coffee, now her no-coffee orders from the doctor were lifted, and her entire mouth exploded with amazing flavors of caramel, sharp bitter coffee, and wonderful gingerbread syrup. After not being allowed coffee for so long, 3 days, this drink was amazing. The sound of crazy joggers running past, children laughing and playing, and other people strolling through the park gave Kendra a bit of comfort, and it was always great to get out and about. Especially at her age. As Kendra made her way over to a wooden table in the middle of the glaring sun, she couldn't help but wonder what the cold case was that she would be solving today. She hoped the task force she was a part of with other retired detectives only solved London's strangest, weirdest, and hardest cold cases, so if fire was somehow involved, this was going to get interesting. Kendra sat at the wooden table and smiled as the warm wood pulsed through her. The feeling was strangely wonderful, and she really looked forward to getting a mini tan whilst they worked the case. 2 other people placed down their takeaway mugs of steaming hot coffee as Jeff Long in his black running tracksuit, Kendra didn't know he ran, black trainers and perfectly combed gray hair sat down in front of her. Then 70-something Patricia Nelson wearing a white t-shirt, black trousers and trainers sat next to Kendra as she gave her a quick hug. This was going to be exciting. Everyone nodded their hellos to each other and Kendra asked, "You run?" Jeff smiled. "Don't even go there. I washed my suit last night. Put it into the tumble dryer overnight. The dryer ate my suit, melted the wife's stuff, so I had to run out the house." "Oh," Kendra said. "Yay, wife isn't too happy with me," Jeff said. "I can imagine," Kendra said, smiling. "So what's the cold case?" As soon as she mentioned that, Jeff's face lit up, and he took a large police file out from under his tracksuit, and he passed it to Kendra and Patricia. "This is a twisted one. 5 years ago, a 50-year-old man was covered in thermite and lit up." Kendra gasped. That was utterly disgusting. Thermite would easily melt through the flesh, causing absolute crippling pain to the victim, and it would destroy most of the evidence. Kendra had to find out what monster did this. Kendra was about to ask about ID when she read in the report the man was later identified as a Mr. Jacob Farland. From what Kendra could read in the file, there wasn't anything too remarkable about him. Mr. Farland was a shelf stacker at the local supermarket after a 3-decade-long career in finance. He had 2 children, a wife and a grandchild. He went home every night to them, no criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Kendra wished she was that lucky. If he was so perfect. "How did this happen, hun?" Patricia asked. Kendra knew she had a point. There was nothing in the file that suggested he was involved in anything criminal, There wasn't an insurance policy, so the wife probably didn't do it, and every single person interviewed said how wonderful he was. What theories do you have? Kendra asked both of them. I got the file 2 days ago, and I think the location is key, Jeff said as he picked up the crime scene photos. Kendra took them, but focused on Patricia for her theory. I don't know, hun. But no one can be this perfect. He died in 2017, so I don't know. Kendra focused on the crime scene photos, and she read the responding officer's statement about what happened when they first arrived. It all seemed pretty normal. The officers got called out by a group of teens who had stumbled, literally, over the dead body in an abandoned industrial estate. Then the officers secured the scene and waited for real detectives to arrive. She still couldn't believe some officers had that attitude. Kendra had always encouraged younger officers to get involved and get real experience in solving crimes. Clearly, these officers on this case didn't want to try. The industrial estate in East London, Kendra said. Wasn't that once a new car place for a government plan that failed? Patricia clicked her fingers. I thought I knew something. The man died in 2017 at that industrial estate, and if I check the dates. Kendra passed her the police file. Yes. The day of the murder was exactly 1 year on from the failure of the government plan, Patricia said. Why didn't the original officers pick it up? Jeff asked. Kendra took another amazing sip of her coffee. Because it wasn't until 7 months had gone by that the estate was closed forever. Who would think a 5-month delay was a good connection? Jeff nodded. Patricia covered her eyes with her hand, and Kendra was starting to think that she should have asked her friends where they wanted to sit. They might not have wanted to sit in the glaring sun for an hour or two. So we know the date of the murder was important. What about security footage or anything like that? Kendra asked. The industrial estate was completely open. No power since it closed, Jeff said, getting his sunglasses out of his pocket. Kendra nodded. That wasn't the worst thing that could have happened. It made sense that no power would be going to the estate, but it meant there was no footage, but she had solved tougher cases with less, she hoped. It seemed like the location was key, like Jeff had mentioned, but Kendra didn't know what to make of the date. It was too much of a coincidence for a murder to accidentally happen a year on from the government plan failing. Someone had to know about that connection. How much building work was done around the time the plan failed? Kendra asked as she tried to find a map of the estate in the file. Not a lot, hun. The only building was the one the body was discovered in. Exactly, Kendra said, as she found an aerial photo of the estate and put it in the middle of the table, showing a single large warehouse where the body was discovered, and it was surrounded by bare land. Look. One building, and the entire land was made bare. A company had to have done that. And how much would the contract have been worth? Kendra asked. As Patricia took out a very new and shiny smartphone that she worked so elegantly, Kendra couldn't believe a bit of jealousy was starting to fill her. Patricia was always great at technology, and Kendra wasn't. She was going to have to invite Patricia round hers one night to teach her how to use it better. Kendra didn't even have something called online banking. Whatever that was. $3 million, Patricia said. Who did get the contract? And how much were they paid for the clearing in single building? Kendra asked. Jeff stood up for a few seconds and stretched his legs. Kendra smiled and wondered what the three of them looked like to passers-by. Probably like 3 old farts who had escaped their care home. Toby Roads Limited got the contract, and they were paid 10,000 hun for the work. Kendra and Jeff just looked at each other. They might have found out the company that lost a lot to the government plan failing, but it still didn't explain the body, the thermite, and the horrific nature of the murder. As she picked up the photo of the body, Kendra forced herself to look at the horrific, twisted, burnt body. She hated the agony this man must have gone through as he was burnt alive, and it just didn't make sense to kill him, let alone in this manner. Pat, what happened to the company? Jeff asked. Shut down 2 years later. Owner filed bankruptcy, 1 year after the murder, and the entire process took a year. Kendra smiled. That was good news for them. It gave them a possible suspect, but why kill Jacob Farland? And before you ask, the owner and the Vic didn't know each other, Patricia said. Kendra took another wonderful sip of her iced coffee and wondered about everything. It made no sense the victim would just go to the warehouse one night when the owner was there. So something else had to be going on. Flicking through the police file, Kendra found the document that listed the timeline for the victim. It was all normal stuff in the daytime, like he kissed his children as they left for work, he went to work himself, and him and his wife met for lunch. Then he disappeared for 10 hours before the body was called in. Did the victim and wife go to lunch often? Kendra asked. No, Jeff said, grabbing the wife's interview transcript. This was a one-off. The victim just asked her out for lunch. She was worried about him getting in trouble for taking an extended lunch, and he assured her it would be okay. Kendra crossed her arms. What's wrong, hun? Does anyone else find that weird? A hard-working, perfect man decides to risk his job and his perfect life just to take his wife out for lunch? Patricia and Jeff slowly nodded. Where did they go? Kendra asked. Here, hun, a place called. Patricia said as she searched it on her phone and showed the results to Kendra. And to her surprise, Toby Roads Limited had a shop right next door. So what you thinking? Jeff asked. Kendra shrugged. It was clear the owner of the company knew the victim, and they had met on the day of the murder. But it was all just theory, there was no concrete proof, and that was what they needed. Kendra picked up the wife's interview transcript again and nodded when she read that the wife said she went straight home after lunch, whilst her husband said he was going straight to work, but thought it was odd when he went into a shop. What if this was all planned? Kendra said. What if that shop was Toby Roads Limited? Jeff just shrugged at her. Hear me out. What if the victim somehow found out the company was going into bankruptcy and wanted to help out the company by increasing interest in the industrial estate again? He did have a career in finance, hun. Exactly. So the victim might have wanted to start freelancing, agreed to meet with the owner at the site, but the owner wants to go there now. Maybe promises him extra money for the inconvenience. Jeff smiled and nodded. Okay. Makes sense. The owner and victim get to the warehouse. The victim starts to explain some finance options. The killer attacks him, maybe restrains him. Then pours thermite on him and lights him up. Patricia said way too enthusiastically. And the thermite would burn away any proof of the restraints, Jeff said. I like it. Kendra stood up and stretched her aching legs. Is it enough for an active detective to take over? Patricia pushed her phone in Kendra's face. Then realized what she had done and pulled it back slightly. Sorry, hun. It's fine, Kendra said, taking her phone. Really? Toby Roads uses thermite in building clearing. One of the few companies licensed to do that. Jeff stood up and punched the air. That's brilliant. That's definitely enough for an active detective to arrest the owner. Thanks, girls. As Kendra watched Jeff walk off to make a phone call, she couldn't help but look back at the photo of the corpse. She let her fingers gently touch the warm image, and she really hoped she had done the victim proud. It was awful what had happened to him. At the end of the day, he was only trying to help a failing company, but clearly his experience, brilliance, and good nature wasn't appreciated. Kendra hoped solving his murder would have given him, his wife, and children some peace. At least they would know what had happened. When she saw Jeff give them a thumb-ups, Kendra smiled as the police were arresting the owner now, and finally the victim would get some kind of justice. She was just sorry it had taken so long. After Jeff came back and bought Kendra, himself, and Patricia another drink, Kendra couldn't believe how lucky she was to have such clever, wonderful, and amazing best friends, and she loved the feeling of giving someone else peace as they solved their cold case. And Kendra was going to be doing this with the task force for a long, long time.
Welcome back everyone, it's me again, Connor Whiteley. So I really hope that you enjoyed today's story, because I flat out love writing, creating stories and sharing them with you. If you really enjoyed today's story, then please remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new content, and the engagement really helps the Whiteleyverse with the YouTube algorithms. And if you want to buy this short story or any of my other fiction, then they're available from all major ebook retailers, and you can get them from your local library if you requested, and you can order the paperback copies from Amazon, your local bookstore or local library if you request it. Lastly, if you want to support the channel on a one-off basis, then you can now buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/Connor Whiteley. Also, if you know anyone who would enjoy today's story, then please share it with them. I'm always really grateful when you wonderful people help spread the word about the channel. So, thanks for watching the Whiteleyverse, and I'll see you again soon. Have a great day, everyone.